Good evening and welcome to the July 13th, 2022 meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We have one committee meeting this evening. It's the Building and Planning Committee. And without further ado, I recognize its chair, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you, President Sinai. Everyone. Before we start, let me just announce that number 7 on our agenda, the conditional use application for 453 West Lancaster has been tabled. So if anyone's here in person or online for that matter, we will not be discussing that tonight. So that being said, we will start with the escrow release, which is on page 2 of our agendas. Before I do the motion, is there any commissioner who would like to take any of these items off of my combined motion? I see none, so I will make the motion. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-5 of the Township Code for the following: 511 Montgomery Avenue, Marion Mercy Academy, escrow release number 2 for $25,000. 100 Lancaster Avenue, Lankenau Emergency Expansion, escrow release number 3 for $191,891. And 200 Pennswood Avenue, Church of the Redeemer, escrow release number 4 for $10,127. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner McComb. Any commissioner discussion on any of these items? Seeing none, is there any public comment on any of these items? Jody, anyone online for this?
There is not. We only have one person online.
Okay. All right. Well, I will then call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is on page 13 of our packets. This is a waiver of the Township Code for open to allow open containers with alcohol in Schaffler Plaza. I will. To get on the table, I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a waiver of Township Code 111-4.2 as requested by the applicant Ardmore Initiative to permit patrons to possess open containers with alcoholic beverages and serve alcoholic beverages in public rights of way within a regulated area in Schaffler Plaza and a portion of Cricket Terrace on September 24, 2022 in the hours enumerated in the information provided. Subject to Ardmore Initiative providing the required insurance certificate documenting adequate coverage required by the township. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. I'm going to call on Mr. Doyle if you would like to make any comments.
Yeah, actually, Nancy Scarlatto's also here from Ardmore Initiative.
Okay.
If you guys have any questions on, I mean, you pretty much addressed everything in the geographic area, and you know, it's great to be standing up here again. I feel like I've seen you guys a lot of times now just asking for these waivers, so it's nice to see that we're kind of moving to a more social environment. And if you have any questions, obviously for me, able to answer them.
Thank you. Since his comments were so brief, I'll ask the applicant, you don't have to say anything, but if you'd like to come up and say anything quickly, you're certainly welcome to.
I will.
Okay. You could just identify yourself, please.
Nancy Scarlatto, Ardmore Initiative. We appreciate your support in this. This is a long-standing event that's been going on for, I think, 13 years. We are very conscious of having ramp-certified people checking IDs. We will provide the insurance certificate, and it's hopefully getting back to, after 2 years of not really having a festival, to a real street festival, and we are expanding to, focus on including other businesses in Ardmore. So we appreciate the support and being able to provide an event for Ardmore and visitors.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. And let me just say, I think it's certainly good for Ardmore and for the community to have these kind of events and liven things up a bit as other events like the bike race do. Mm-hmm. So with that, are there any commissioners who have any questions for the applicant or for Mr. Doyle, or any comments? I see none. Is there any public comment? Thank you. Is there any public comment on this matter? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? Raise your hands. Any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item on page 17 of our agendas is the approval of certificates of appropriateness. We have two matters tonight. Before I make a motion for both of them, are there any commissioners who would like either of these individually considered? I see none. Okay. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historic Architectural Review Board at the meeting held July 5th, 2022, 1025 Youngsford Road, Gladwin Historic District 22-6, and 37 North Buck Lane, Haverford Station Historic District 21-28. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner O'Neill. I see Mr. Pritchard standing there. Does anyone have any questions or comments on either application for Mr. Pritchard? I see none. Just make sure life's easy tonight, Greg. Is there any public comment on either of these applications? I see none. Okay, I will call for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item at page 25 of our agendas, there are three applications for the Historical Commission. Would any commissioners request separate consideration of any of these items? I see none. Okay. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on June 27, 2022. 39 Morris Avenue, Bryn Mawr Freight Station, Class 2, number 2021-R-13. 444 North Highland Avenue, Marion Station, Class 2, number 2022-R-13. And 330 Gypsy Lane, Wynwood, Class 2, number 2022-R-15. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Zeloff. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Okay, for Greg. Commissioner Zeloff.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. I would just observe that on the first item at 39 Morris Avenue, that is the former Bryn Mawr train station. It has been a restaurant. It is proposed to continue as a restaurant after the modifications are made. We've seen this before. We look forward to this restaurant opening, providing that they follow our rules, since it is a historic structure, and we thank the staff for their diligent work with the property owner and their architect to help move that along and with an understanding and a compliance with our code. Thank you.
Okay, great. Anyone else, any other questions or comments? I just have one, Greg. With 330 Gypsy Lane, my recollection, is this a property a few years ago we saw that, and you may not have been with this, that had some work done before permits?
Yes, it was one of my first applications as Historical Commission staff, so it was one to remember.
Bring up a fond memory for you. This time, was there any issue? Was the work done? Is the application coming in the proper manner?
It is. It's the same owner, same contractor, and they went through the process, and the commission recommended approval of their application.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, is there any public comment on any of these three items? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed, raise your hands. Seeing none, any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you very much. While we're on a roll with this ease, let's take the next item.
We're going to have to slow it down a little bit.
I think so.
This is the preliminary land development plan for 250 Haverford Road.
This will slow down.
Yeah, Penn, Wynne Elementary School. That's it. You get the joke. Okay. Penn, Wynne Elementary School. And I see Mr. Leswing is preparing to make some comments. So Chris,
I am.
why don't you do that?
Just want to spend a couple minutes walking the commissioners through this application. This is a preliminary plan for Penn Wynne Elementary School. This application is under the previous zoning, and it's somewhat of a legacy project. This predates the new zoning code of 2020, and it really came out of part of the district-wide reorganization of the Lower Merion School District that resulted in the construction of Black Rock Middle School, reorganization of the existing elementary schools and the existing middle schools. During that time, prior to that construction of Black Rock Middle School, which is well on schedule to open up this fall, there had been a lot of additional enrollment in many of the existing elementary schools. And at that time, there was stress put on by additional parking from staff and visitors to those sites. This time, there was concern about some of that parking, and it had been brought to the zoning hearing board about bringing the site into compliance with the required zoning for that additional staff. Subsequent to the zoning hearing board, the Penn Wynne Civic Association, Lower Merion High School, had very productive conversations and came to an agreement about what the future of this should look like if you're going to do this. This is the smallest site that we have for an elementary school in the township. Green space is at a premium. The green space in the back of this site serves as green space for the community and for the school itself. So seeing additional construction on that site is something that meant a lot to the community and also to the school district. And as a result, there was an agreement that was put in place for some additional reserve parking in front of the school along Haverford Road. And that's parking that's going to be held in reserve, and I'll explain that. But this project also then ties together some other improvements that were part of that enrollment expansion, including the modular classrooms that were there, the temporary modular classrooms. Those are all being removed from throughout the district this summer, while all the new students go to Black Rock Middle School. But this kind of memorializes all that. So let me take you through what the different elements of this are. So it includes the removal of the existing modular classrooms, the transfer of 4,400 square feet of the impervious that was occupied by those classrooms to become a play area that's located in the back of the school, currently on a green area. And then it also includes construction of some new additional stormwater management, and then also some reserve parking that's going to be placed along Haverford Road. And this is just a site plan showing this. So these are the location of the existing modular classrooms. They're going away. They're going away as we speak. They add a certain impervious surface footprint to that. The school district would like to, is planning, and as part of this approval, will save that, somewhat bank that impervious surface by moving it over to this play area that's the brown area at the bottom of this graphic. This will be a new hard surface play area. Currently, as you come out of the school, it's all green right here. This will actually be a functional sort of play area that kids don't get muddy when they go back and forth. The construction of this also requires stormwater management. Then in the front of the school, to address the long-standing parking issues, the school district is proposing to install a 26-space parking lot to be held in reserve. It is no one's intention that this will actually ever get built, but it's required by zoning. If now that with all the students coming off and all the faculty leaving, it reduces that parking problem in the neighborhood and on the school. So this is technically in reserve. It's supposed to be held in reserve. The location of this along Haverford Road could have some impacts upon the front of the school. This is a beautiful old historic building. This is a historic resource. And the Haverford Avenue streetscape has some just magnificent sweet gum trees. They are some of the nicest sweet gum trees that are in the entire township. If this parking lot is actually constructed, it will result in the removal of those trees. It will really change the appearance of that part of the neighborhood. So this is a project to hold us in reserve, and also as part of that, construct stormwater management with that reserve parking. Reserve parking is something that is permitted in our code. It's something that says you meet your zoning, but if there isn't an actual need for it, the board can grant the ability to not install that. There is a requirement, though, that the stormwater management be installed ahead of time, even before the reserve parking is put in. Because of the impact of that stormwater management to those existing trees, staff has included a condition to not install the stormwater management in the front of the school until the time that the parking is installed. If the parking is required, then put that stormwater management in. So that would save a couple of those very large trees in the front of the property. Let me take you through the rest of it. So here's the location of the modular classrooms. The impervious surface is coming here to the back. Just to orient you, this is Haverford Road, and then this is Trent Road in the back. The reserve parking is proposed to have connect into the front of the school, and it would have some porous pathways. It would come in and out from Haverford Road, and then be just kind of a pod to itself. There has been some concern expressed from the Penn Wynne Civic Association that on paper this looks good, but ultimately to construct a reserve parking lot would require a PennDOT highway occupancy permit. PennDOT permits are not required until they go to the permit stage. They're not really part of the land development stage. The municipality does its piece. The township engineer is here and he can elaborate. But as we've had discussions, it is our estimation that this parking lot, as laid out, PennDOT would be somewhat in agreement, would be generally in agreement with. What we anticipate is if PennDOT had an issue, if this parking lot ever had to be put in, and if PennDOT ever had an issue, they would most likely have some restrictions on the right ins, the right out, because of peak hour travel up and down Haverford Road. We're not anticipating this would result in the driveway or the size of the parking lot being changed that would affect any of the impervious surface. So there are conditions that are in the approval and in the conditional use approval requiring a post-development traffic study and some other studies for parking to ensure that this parking isn't actually needed. If the parking is needed, then it would move forward to a permit phase. If PennDOT during that permit phase requires a significant change, this would be brought back as a land development again to you, right? You wouldn't see this and we would have that chance to work this through. The reason right now for not moving this around and putting the driveway in another location, moving that driveway affects other trees, right? We don't want to require a lot of trees to be removed if we don't have to. But I think as a community, we're protected that the front of the school, if it ever comes in, the township will have an ability, if it's ever significantly changed by PennDOT, to review this and to make sure that it is the most appropriate design going forward. This is just a picture of those street gums that I was referencing earlier. This is along Haverford Road. Several of these would be required to be removed if this reserve parking or the stormwater was ever installed. This is just a graphic showing the turning motions that were submitted by the applicant to show that the driveway and the parking lot do work for ins and outs, and it's a fully functioning parking lot. This has been done to the satisfaction of the township engineer. Just some of the conditions that I referenced earlier. Many of these are about traffic impact studies and making sure what the triggers would be if this parking was ever required. But we're all assuming that with less students, less staff, this parking is not going to be required in the immediate or near future. This is just some background as things came up at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission did impose an additional condition on Monday. They revised the condition, and the school district would like to request some modifications to that to make it a little bit clearer. And I'll let the applicant explain that. But their changes are acceptable to staff. I think it forwards what the Planning Commission was trying to get to. In hindsight, the Planning Commission was doing it on the fly. They just cleaned it up a little bit to move it forward. I'm happy to answer your questions. I know that was a bit rambling. It's a bit of a complicated application, but staff does recommend approval with the modification proposed by the school district with the conditions.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Chris. So just so people know, I'm going to see if anyone has questions for Chris, and then I'm going to invite the applicant, if the applicant wants to, it's not required, to I'm seeing them shake their heads, so maybe have some brief comments after we take questions for Chris. So then there'll be another opportunity for questions of the applicant, and then, of course, comments. So, Commissioner McComb, you look like you have a question for Chris.
I do. Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Chris, thank you for the presentation. Just What are the types of things that would trigger taking the parking out of reserve and actually, I mean, it seems like unless the middle school doesn't get built, which is unlikely, are there things you could think of now, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, that would require taking out of reserve and actually constructing parking?
You would need more staff and students, right? You would need a greater parking demand. So right now, during the last decade, as the school district experienced an enrollment increase, they were adding students to the existing facilities and staff. All that extra staff and an entire existing grade are being relocated. So it would take an awful lot to repopulate that, in my opinion.
I would think, I mean, if we're removing the modular classrooms, I would think that they're probably, and again, who knows what happens with enrollment and those trends, but, I mean, is it a safe assumption that it's unlikely that we would have to take that parking
In my
out of reserve?
estimation, it's very unlikely that this will, based on current projections, that this will be required to be done.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner McKeon.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Chris, I have a question. It kind of relates, I think, a little bit to what Commissioner McComb just mentioned, but if you wouldn't mind going back to one of the last slides, I think it's at condition number 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to ask you about that revised language.
Let's see. There we go.
Okay. So there's a distinction made between whether or not the change is major or minor. And my questions are just, what constitutes a major or minor change, and who makes that distinction?
It's my decision, acting as a code administrator. So it's really, I would look at this from a common sense approach. If it resulted in disturbance to natural features, steep slopes, there are some steep slopes in the front of this building, and it also resulted in disturbance to some existing trees, right? Those are the major defining features. But also, this is a historic resource. So if there was a new driveway that was going to be extended in front that the Historic Commission hadn't signed off on, that's a new plan, right? Those are the triggers that would bring this back. If, I would say what a minor trigger would be, if it was a sign that put up said no right in or no left turns, right in, right out, that's a minor turn. That's just what you would normally do through a permit process.
So you're saying if it's affecting the trees, if it's the slopes, or like a new driveway, something like that would be major, signage would be minor?
If it would result in a significant change of impervious surface or a realignment of the driveway. If the driveway is simply maybe being expanded 2 feet or so between the right-of-way and the street, and PennDOT required a little bit more turning radius, that's not a minor. That's something that would routinely be anticipated through the permitting process. But in all of that, the real concern, I think, from the Civic Association is the total amount of impervious surface. So if the parking lot increases in size through this permitting process and it required additional impervious surface, the school district is very aware that they would have to balance that impervious surface from somewhere else on the campus. They would have to remove a path or remove perhaps this new play area. They'd have to maybe come back and make that smaller to be in compliance with zoning.
Great, all right. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Yes, I had a question about PennDOT inspecting this the reserve parking. You said that this could only occur if the school district decided to use this parking. Can PennDOT look at this right now? Is there anything lawfully that keeps them from not inspecting this area?
Well, normally in the land development process, PennDOT a PennDOT review isn't required. Right? So at this stage, it's really the municipal approval. Now, applicants, to be a smart applicant, you would consult with PennDOT to have a good idea, could I install this, right? If I'm going to go through the design phase and get it approved, would PennDOT do that? Mm-hmm. But it's not the township's requirement to do that. It's only the township's requirement to get PennDOT approval when it actually goes for the highway occupancy permit, because it's a PennDOT road. Mm-hmm. Nothing's stopping the applicant from reaching out to PennDOT and getting that. Now, staff is very much aware of the Civic Association's concerns. We've reached out to traffic safety. We're unable to get anybody from traffic safety here tonight to have this, but both Joe and I will be we'll be touching base with them in the next couple days, and we'll be able to report out between now and next week's Board of Commissioners meeting on their estimation of what this looks like.
So what you're saying is with PennDOT that usually the procedure is involved with land development, but that doesn't, that still allows the school district to reach out at this point just to get an opinion from PennDOT.
If
Yeah.
I was the applicant, I would want to know that. I'd have my engineer make the best, I'd have them, PennDOT with engineers, they informally talk all the time. I would want to have that informal, back of the envelope look at this to make sure that we're on the right page.
Yeah, and that's certainly what the neighbor, or the Penguin Civic would like. They may have, the school district may have a difference of opinion, but thank you very much.
And even with that, I mean, our engineers can certainly do that as well. There's nothing that stops our township engineer from picking up the call to somebody that they know at PennDOT and just saying, we have this application before us, what do you think? It would be an informal review, but certainly.
That would be fine.
But Joe Mastronardo is here from the Township Engineer's Office. He's very familiar with this, and he's worked with PennDOT for many, many years, and I think he has a fairly good idea of what would be anticipated from PennDOT.
Great. Can't wait to hear.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else questions for Chris? I can't see, I can see the online commissioners. I don't see anyone saying anything. So, okay, I am going to invite the applicant to come up. If you'd like to say a few words, you're certainly welcome to. Just make sure, please, to identify yourself at the start.
Good evening, Jamie Jen here on behalf of Lower Merion School District. I don't have much to add to what Chris has presented. I know that there is some concern about the actual installation of this parking lot, but as Chris has reviewed, this layout and the site design was all done through the tentative sketch process with input from the Civic Association, and this is the plan that they preferred, and this is the plan that we have agreed to get approval for. And in terms of getting the PennDOT approval, I mean, we will need to get it if and ever this gets built. As Chris has said, the township engineer has looked at it, our traffic engineer has looked at it, and they don't anticipate major issues. So we don't want this to delay in any way the school district moving forward with this project, especially because they do need to do certain improvements before the summer is over, before the kids come back to school. And in terms of protection in the future to any changes, or should PennDOT raise any issues, I think condition number 16 addresses that. There was a little bit of an amendment to that condition through the Planning Commission because they were not exactly comfortable with the condition as it was worded, because they thought that that would kind of give Chris or any future director final say. But the township has a process whereby if you have a recorded final plan and there are substantial changes that are being made, you need to go through the plan amendment process. So even without that condition, we would need to come back should there be major changes or concerns. But again, I think number 16 as worded kind of captures what the Planning Commission wanted to do with that.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the applicant? Commissioner Churchill?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that the neighbor, what regards to PennDOT, that the neighborhood would be very happy just to have an informal review. It doesn't have to be an approval. And I was just wondering if that would be agreeable with you.
The feedback that I have gotten from the school district, and ultimately it's their decision to make, is that they don't have any issues per se with continuing or having a conversation with PennDOT as to whether they have any major issues with this. But again, it's sort of the timing issue.
Yeah.
It's, from what I know of PennDOT, it's highly unlikely that we're going to get anything before next week's Board of Commissioners meeting. That is my main concern. I don't want to hold up this whole approval process because of that. But I think representatives of the school district have conveyed to neighbors, even yesterday, that they would be willing to further pursue it and continue the discussion with them and share any feedback that they have received. But again, not at the expense of not being able to move forward.
I'm sorry, what's the timeline, do you think, about if you can't get an informal review from PennDOT by the 20th, what do you think the timeline could be?
I am just going by other
I know,
projects
just-
that I've,
yeah.
you know, and I'm told that if PennDOT has 30 days to look at something, they'll get back to you on the 31st day. I mean, that's what I've been told. So, I mean, we can try
So
and
if
reach
this
out, and
is-
this is an informal review.
Yeah, so you're
which-
talking mid-August.
But I guess in terms of, there is work that needs to be done in terms of the modulars being out, you know,
Yeah, yeah, that's
getting that
fine.
field back, and even a loss of a month is going to greatly
Yeah,
impact that
well, we're
timeline.
not talking about a loss of a month, we're talking about if you agree to some kind of informal review of contacting PennDOT, and what you're saying is that you can't, you know, it's unrealistic to meet that timeline on the 20th, but what you're saying is that it could probably be done within the 30 days.
And
Or
that's
31st
just-
day.
That's just a guess on my
Yeah,
part.
I know, I
Right.
know, I'm not holding, but that would be agreeable to the school district?
It would be agreeable for them to do that, yes, I believe, and
Okay.
I'll have to get, you know,
Okay.
final confirmation. I think just that standing alone, yeah,
Yeah,
I think they're
okay.
agreeable to doing that.
Okay. And just what Chris was indicating, that having our department taking a look can be done quickly too. So that's also would be agreeable too.
Presumably, yes.
Yeah, okay, great.
Thanks.
One big happy family.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mastronardo, did you want to add something? Because you're,
Sure. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit easier
you
for...
just identify yourself.
Okay. Joe Mastronardo, Township Engineer's Office.
Thank you.
And sometimes it's a little bit easier for the township to get a response out of PennDOT. And, you know, we'll make an effort as well, and within the next week, and maybe have, you know, a tentative response from the permitting department at PennDOT. We're there every day, so we can have a casual conversation about the driveway, and if they have any major issues, I think that would at least be identified before the commissioners' meetings next week.
Okay, great. I'm not quite sure how we're going to word this, but, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other
Thank you.
commissioners with questions for Ms. June? I see none. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're up to comments. First of all, comments from commissioners. I would also remind my colleagues that there is not a motion on the table yet. So if someone would like to motion, otherwise I'm prepared to do it.
If you do it, I may make an amendment.
All right, so I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a preliminary land development plan. The plan dated April 11, 2022, and last revised May 20, 2022, prepared by Chester Valley Engineers for 250 Haverford Road, Penn, Wynne Elementary School in Wynwood. Is there a second? Thank you very much, Commissioner Whalen. Okay, Commissioner
Yeah.
Churchill.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to word this, but it seems as if the school district is amenable to have, you know, an informal review by Lower Merion and PennDOT. I understand that it would not be ready by the 20th of July, but it would probably be ready by mid-April, mid-August. And I'm just looking for guidance on how
So
this could be crafted.
Let me make a suggestion, because,
Yeah.
and Commissioner Churchill, tell me if I'm wrong, but you're suggesting that they conduct an informal review, but you're not suggesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, that there's any consequence, as long as they conduct the review,
Yes.
there's no consequence if the review comes out one way or another. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so as a suggestion, we could add a new condition of approval at the end of this, and, you know, call it condition 38, even though it doesn't go well with the paragraphs, but saying that the applicant and I'm saying it, I'm not writing it, but the applicant will agree to, will conduct a condition, the applicant will conduct an informal review with PennDOT of the driveway, is it?
The reserve parking.
Of the reserve parking. You know,
If I may interrupt, I mean, PennDOT doesn't have any right to review the reserve parking. All PennDOT has a right to do is to review the driveway access onto Haverford Road. They can say widen it, narrow it, they could actually say no driveway, but they have nothing to say over the reserve parking.
Okay, so-
Reserve parking is already a condition imposed by the conditional use and by the, and now by the land development process.
Well, there's concern, with curb cuts, so
So,
conduct, I'm sorry.
I don't mean to interrupt, let me make a suggestion. This is the preliminary plan. So why don't we say, as the condition, the applicant will request that PennDOT review the driveway access road off of Haverford Road within 10 days following the preliminary plan approval. Does that, looking at our manager, does that seem to work for you, for you?
I think
Or
that's the
maybe-
correct thing they'd be reviewing. I don't know about the 10
Okay.
days
Well,
after.
I meant they'll make the application within 10 days. I'm certainly not suggesting that they submit the results of that. I don't know, Chris, I'm kind of looking at you if you think, and Ms. June, if you think that would work. Do you want me to say it again, or you're okay? Okay, I'll just say it one more time. New condition 38, the applicant will request that PennDOT review the driveway access road off of Haverford Road within 10 days following preliminary plan approval.
And-
President Sinai, you have a
Didn't
comment?
they make a quick, may I suggest putting the within 10 days of
You're
preliminary
uncomfortable with
approval
that?
at the beginning? So it's
Yeah,
clear
that's
that goes to
fine.
the applicant.
Okay. So now we're saying within
Yeah.
10 days following preliminary
Yeah.
approval, the applicant will request that PennDOT review the driveway access road off Haverford
The,
Road, period.
The second point is the review of our staff. Is that, would that be you, Chris?
We will update the board prior to next week's board meeting from traffic safety. Our traffic safety department's been contacted, we're just coordinating with them. You'll have an update on that. That review will be done internally. It doesn't need to be a condition, it's already in the
So that
motion.
doesn't need to go on this amendment?
I don't think it really has anything to do with the amendment, it's just an internal thing. Your staff is already doing
Okay.
it. You'll have that information.
Okay.
All right, so are you,
Yeah.
so I'm going, and let me just go back, that's okay with the applicant? Okay, good. So I'm going to consider that a friendly amendment then.
Great.
So, having said that, Commissioner Churchill, do you have any other comments at this point?
No? Thank you
Okay,
very
great.
much for your help.
Sure.
Thank you for the school district's cooperation and Penn Civic.
Okay, great. Are there other commissioners with comments at this time? Seeing none. I'm sorry? Well, we're going
Can
to
we
go to
do a
public
public comment?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
going to public comment. Okay, now it's time, I'll ask if there's any public comment. Ma'am, yeah, feel free to come up to that podium. Please identify yourself and you're welcome to make some comments.
I think Shelby Sparrow is online and wanted to make a comment. I'd rather her
Okay, well.
comment first.
If she's here after we finish with the in-person, we'll go to online comments.
All right, okay. I'm a little confused, to be honest, as to this timing and
What-
what
could
what
you
is the point of,
I'm sorry, could you identify yourself
I'm
first?
sorry.
ma'am?
My name is Sharon Weinstein. I'm a member of the Penn Civic Association. I'm also a neighbor of the school. And I also have a master's in transportation engineering, so this traffic stuff is on the top of my mind. I want to start by saying that this assumption that this reserved parking will never need to be put in, I think it's still, we're waiting to see that. We wanted to reserve the requirement until after the students move out in the hope that the reserved parking won't need to be built. But I don't feel as convinced as some people in the township seem to that we won't need to have this reserved parking built. I know Tavani had said in their study that there was abundant parking, but I think the neighbors feel otherwise, and they included in their analysis all of Remington Road as being parking for Penn Elementary, which is quite a distance away, and there's no sidewalks connecting Remington Road to Penn Elementary. So I'm imagining on a rainy day, parents with their kids and their strollers, putting them on the middle of the street on Remington Road where the cars are all backed up to walk over to Penn, and that's Penn parking. I don't think that was fair or appropriate for that to be included in the parking analysis. Hopefully, when the students move out, there will be enough parking, but I'm not making that assumption and making this, what's the word, unimportant what happens with the reserved parking because it's never going to be built. I think that remains to be seen. I'm not completely understanding what we're saying. If what PennDOT has to say about this curb cut doesn't affect whether we're improving it, then why are we even making it a requirement within 10 days? My understanding is we wanted PennDOT to review this before the land development was approved, land use was approved, because if PennDOT, it requires some sort of curb cut or driveway that would require a lot more impervious surface, then that play space should be smaller in the first place. It's not easy to take away play space from parents and children at the school after the fact. So we would just like to have some sort of informal approval that the way it's designed now would be okay with PennDOT, in theory. We're not asking for a written letter of approval, and we've been asking for this for a month from the township and pointing it out, so I'm not sure why now suddenly there's no time to do it. I'm, flummoxed on this. And also that the Lower Merion Police have not been contacted until now. We've also been asking for that for weeks. Fortunately, one of the members of our board and the school board and Jim Lill had a conversation yesterday, which was really helpful, and the school board and the school staff have agreed to try to get PennDOT and the police department to look at that, but I wish that the school had been asked for these things weeks ago, and we could have avoided all this hubbub. We're just trying to stick with the land development process and the land use process as we agreed. We're not trying to block anything. We want this process to go through, and we want this plan to go through. We just want to make sure the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other public comment of anyone here in person? Seeing none. Jody, is there anyone online?
Yes, Shelby Sparrow.
Okay. Ms. Sparrow, if you, we don't see you yet, but if,
Oh, there she is.
okay.
There we go.
Here she is. Hi, Ms. Sparrow, go ahead.
Hi, Shelby Sparrow. I live in Penn, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Penn Civic Association. A lot of what I had planned to say has already been said, so I'm going to, pare down my notes and try not to repeat what others have said. So I'm sorry if I jump around a bit, but obviously, we do feel that it's important to have an informal review by PennDOT, and we understand that it will not be a formal review or a formal, a highway occupancy permit or anything like that, but just a general formal review at preliminary plan stage seems to be achievable from PennDOT just to make sure that there are not any major issues with this. And I appreciate Chris's comments on that, and any help that the township can give to getting that review, hopefully by next Wednesday, the 20th, so that we can have that information prior to the approval of this plan. We keep hearing that we don't need to worry about these issues because it's parking in reserve that will likely never happen. And maybe that's okay for properties that aren't maxing out their impervious, but it puts the Civic in a really tough position to come out in full support at this stage without reassurance from PennDOT or from Lower Merion Police Department. Just signing off even in an informal way on this plan. And we want to be very clear, Sharon mentioned this, there's no objection to this plan. We agree that it'll be a non-issue completely if PennDOT and Lower Merion Police Department agree the design is viable. But the process should be followed for everyone's benefit and just ability to know that that a plan that's being approved is viable. Because if this plan is approved next week, the school district has asked to begin installing the asphalt play space this month before final plan, and the Civic verbally agreed. But that was under the assumption that PennDOT and LM Police Department would be consulted prior to this approval. So, what is the recourse should a revised final plan require additional impervious? This was discussed on Monday evening. I brought this up at Planning Commission, and I just would like to note that the Civic supports the Planning Commission's recommendation to amend Condition 16, stating that any changes to the plan after preliminary plan approval would require approval by the Board of Commissioners. I also want to say that yesterday and today, Jim Lill reached out to the Civic, and I believe we had very productive conversations about these last few steps with this agreement and approval. I appreciate the open communication, and they have agreed to reach out to PennDOT and Lower Merion Police Department for reviews, and hopefully we can have that information before next Wednesday. We've really come a long way with this. We've all been through it, and we're very close, and I just really hope that these questions can be resolved and the plan can move forward the way we all agree. I think that's what we're all on the same page with that. So I'm hoping we can move forward that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sparrow. Is anyone else online?
There is not.
Okay. So I will then close public comment. Any further commissioner comments at all? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I see 10. Any opposed? Any abstentions? So that carries unanimously. I believe there are 10 votes. So thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is on page 50. It's actually, they switched pages on me here. This is the second stage plan for 65 Sandra Court in Bryn Mawr. Chris, do you have some comments to make?
I can. This is an application the board is rather familiar with. It was just, I believe, last fall that you approved the 5-lot subdivision for this property. It's approximately 6-acre property over off of Mount Pleasant Road and Spring Mill Road. It's formerly been a single-family home. Some other lots were consolidated together and a new 5-lot subdivision was put in. It's an open space preservation subdivision which has a significant amount of open space around the perimeter of it. Most of the work was done at preliminary plan. But there was a requirement with each of the houses that they come forward to have second stage plan approval. This is what they're coming in for. This is the second of the properties. This is 65 Sandra Court. I just have the location of the property up here. It's at the end of the bulb of the cul-de-sac. And second stage plan approval is required for homes in residential subdivisions that aren't really known the exact location at the time of subdivision. So now that the overall project was approved, the developer's gone out and engaged individual property owners. That individual property owner has customized the home to this site, and they're seeking approval of that. And second stage plan approval isn't really to do much more than to look at the location of that home to make sure that the driveway and the house location don't significantly disturb natural features. It gives the board and the township the ability to move things around to save large trees, which are many of these open space reservation areas. This project is a bit different. While this was a treed site and had a house and had a very nice landscape around it, The majority of the trees on this site were unhealthy. There were large ash trees, there were birch trees. Many of them were being removed due to health issues. There were also significant issues on this site with spotted lanternfly that had infested many of the maples. There were Norway maples. It just wasn't a high quality landscape. It was wooded, but it was poorly functioning. So many of the existing trees here are actually being removed and replaced with a much more sustainable landscape that includes native trees that are much more susceptible or much less susceptible to spotted lanternfly. So with this house being located, there really weren't any impacts upon natural features. And then this is what the property looks like. It's a fairly large house to the lot. This is what our open space preservation districts look like. They become cul-de-sacs. You have preservation area around the perimeter of the site, and then you have the house on the lot. So the lot is a smaller lot because the open space is put in the perimeter of this. There are no issues with this. There's no impact upon natural features. There's no impact upon steep slopes. There are no waivers required. Staff recommends approval as presented.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments for Chris? Commissioner O'Neill.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chris. I just have two questions for you. One is, on this existing site, is there a temporary retaining wall that's already been built? Or is that a neighbor?
Yes.
And that's to your satisfaction?
That is to the township engineer's satisfaction, yes.
Okay, okay. I will assume that that will be in some ways hidden over time. Okay, and secondly, this pertains to, again, the tree plantings within a preserved parcel. We spoke at length about this when we approved the entirety of this open space plan and the importance of having any new trees that are proposed either on any of the second stage preliminary plan sites, the home sites, or the street trees not be uniform, that they should look very volunteer because this is a preserve and we don't want these planned kind of, we are in the suburbs kind of feel. How are we on that in terms of the design, and is that that's always top of my mind when it comes to this type of subdevelopment? Or so that's, I was just curious about that is on top of your mind as well.
They are, the street trees that are proposed for the site comply with the township street tree requirements. So they are going to be regularly spaced along the front, much like you see any other road in the township. I believe that there are varying species, which will give it that non-uniform look that you've indicated.
That's not good.
But I don't have the specific landscape plan with me now. I can do that offline with you between now and next week.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's really important because we made such a stink about that we can't have these uniform trees along properties in a preserve. It defeats the purpose entirely. So I want to make sure that the applicant is maybe willing to, even if it's off by a couple of feet every other tree, that they're not, this has to look very organic. I believe. So unless that's happened, I'm not prepared to support this.
I think what the applicant was honestly trying to do is meet the township requirements. But what I'll do is we can do that. We can have that conversation offline. I'll show you the landscape plan, and if adjustments need to be made next week, we can make those.
Great, thank you. Thanks.
Okay, President Sinai.
Yeah, if I may follow up on that, the excellent set of questions. So,
Thank you.
So, in the, when we approved the subdivision, there was a rather elaborate landscape plan that was presented to us. And I think we would have noticed regular street trees on that landscape plan had they been there. And so I'm wondering if there's, so I guess my question is, does, the township street tree requirement supersede like some landscape plan, or is there a landscape plan that addresses this that we can go back to?
The board has the ability to adjust the street trees so they're consistent with the number of street trees, and we've done this many times with land development to try to work around if there's a large existing tree, or if there's a pipe or something. So it's really, as long as the right number of trees is planted, that's really what matters. It's not really the pattern.
Great, thank you, Chris.
Okay, all right. Any other commissioner questions, comments? Okay, I see none, so I'm going to make a motion I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of a second stage plan for 65 Sandra Court in Bryn Mawr. The plan dated May 13, 2022, prepared by Apex Design and Engineering Group, shows construction of new single-family dwelling with 3,451 square foot footprint and an attached 3-car garage on lot number 2. Is there a second? Oh, thank you, Commissioner Stevenson. All right. Any further Commissioner questions, comments? I see none. Is there any public comment on this matter? I see none. Anything online, Judy? Anyone online?
No one is online now.
Okay, thank you. So I will call the motion for a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand signifying aye. Any opposed? One opposed, any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes. Commissioner O'Neill, may this go on consent?
No, I'll be pulling it off of consent. Next week I will pull it off consent, so no.
So it should not go on
No.
You're saying no, I'm sorry, okay, fine. Okay, well, thank you, and the next matter having been tabled, that concludes the business of the Building and Planning Committee tonight.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. And with that, that concludes tonight's meeting of the Lower Merion Board of Commissioners. We're adjourned.
All right.